Hey gang, we're having a look today at this knife, the Lionsteel M4. So this is a sort of compact camp belt knife. Some use on it there. Sent to me by viewer Kevin to have a bit of a review of and a bit of a look at in comparison to the Fallkniven F1. So I'll give you the rundown of this bad boy here. So you've got a 3.75 inch blade. There we are. Maybe 3.5 inch blade perhaps. So yeah, using the inch markers there. And overall it's like a small, compact, little rugged use camp knife, I would suggest. Sort of generally made for whatever task you might need to come across. Not specialized, a bit of a jack of all trades knife. Kind of on the small side for perhaps even using as an EDC fixed blade knife, if that's the kind of chap you are, or chapette. So yeah, it's this version has a few different versions. This version has like this diamond woodish resinous wood as the handle. I can't remember what it's called. I'll flash that up on the screen. And then it's got an M390 blade. So very, very nice materials here. Sells for about 150 US dollars, and it comes with this very nice little leather sheath. Let's do some size comparisons of the knife so you can get your head around how big it is. So this is next to a Halterfor's GK, kind of heavy duty knife. See the blades are about the same length. Handle's a bit longer on the GK. This is it next to a Mora. So the Mora is just a tiny little bit bigger than this knife. It is quite compact, as I said. And this is it next to the Lionsteel T5, kind of like a bigger brother style knife. This one's in Nylox. It's a sort of next category up style knife, I would say. An extra little inch and a bit on the whole length. Much more of a general sort of survival utility multi-purpose knife. You can span sort of slightly longer bits of wood and whatnot with that. And of course next to the Fallkniven F1, which is a pretty close competitor to the knife. So I took this knife and I did some wood carving style tasks, especially in comparison with the F1, and I found that it made feather sticks well, it battens just fine, it does all that sort of stuff, no worries at all. It's got a full tang construction, and it's obviously a fairly robust little thickness there. Let's look at the next, the F1. So yeah, it's probably maybe a touch thinner, but still probably very little in terms of variance, especially when considering this is made out of a pretty tough stainless steel, whereas this is tough too because it's laminated VG10, but this one's M390, which if you've seen Guy over at Survive Knives' tests on M390, can definitely take a pounding when treated right. So this one's made in Italy by Lionsteel. It's a Maletta design, seems to be their in-house designer, and it's a just a good looking little I guess knife for anyone really. It's certainly unintimidating, and it's quite sort of, especially with the wood style handle, it's quite rustic looking as well. So very, very pleasing to the eye, if you ask me. It can be taken down with Torx bits, so you can take these handle slabs off. I'm not going to muck with it too much because it's not my knife and it is fairly expensive as well. Then you've got this tail like butt here where the tang protrudes that you could use for cracking and smacking and that sort of stuff. It's got a really nice little forward finger choil, which does help you keep it sharp so you don't get any sort of spooning out near the forward choil there, or the handguard. And yeah, it's just got a really nice standard drop point shape. So I took this knife and I did some food cutting next, and I found that unlike some Lionsteels which come, this T5 came rather sort of thick behind the edge, so I had to back this off myself, and my Lionsteel SR1 or SR2 did the same. This one's actually quite well ground, so it's already got a fairly high bevel there, which is good, so it actually makes it quite a decent slice. As you see, it sort of destroys these lemons, really goes straight through them, making really nice thin slices of the lemons. Without too much effort. So sometimes, I mean, you can generally get really thin slices with most sharp knives, but it takes a fair bit of like micro steering and technique, I guess. This one was quite effortless, just a bit of pressure towards the lemon and it came across the face really, really well. Then I did some carrot. Carrot's a bit more of a test because it's quite brittle and you need a really sharp knife to really thinly cut carrots, and this one did okay. It did about as well as you would hope a knife of this thickness would do. Nothing unlike the little Nalaka slicing carrots, that's for sure. That thing absolutely rice papers them. But yeah, for a knife of this size, it would certainly, what I'm getting at is it would certainly make like a campside stew or something like that. No problems at all. It's got a good grind for cutting cheese, if you are going to use this as a cheese knife. Having this secondary flat portion here does make it unless the blade's really super thin, if you're going to have a thicker knife, you want to have this little secondary flat here. Cutting cheese is a little bit like battening wood, so if you get full cheese to surface contact, it can sort of get stuck and start to tear the cheese. And I was cutting quite vintage cheese as well, so fairly crumbly. And this bit of relief here gives the cheese a bit of a push out, and it stops it from sticking and crumbling. So very, very cool technical cheese cutting. Oh yeah. And then I did some mushrooms, which is sort of where it started to fall down a little bit. Mushrooms, quite soft, quite sticky, like quite gritty, on like a fine level. So it did sort of make a bit of a mess of the mushroom. So I would guess perhaps keep your mushroom slices a bit thicker if you're using this bad boy to make cheese, mushroom, carrot, and lemon soup, which sounds like a recipe for diarrhea. Anyway, so let's talk about it next. The Fallkniven F1. Look, handling this knife makes me really think that Fallkniven need to either lower their prices, update their materials on the F1, because this is about the same price. It's like $10 cheaper, but then with the that's with the Zytel sheath, with the leather sheath, which is a very similar style sheath to this actually from Fallkniven, it's about the same price. So you're thinking, yeah, both of them are, you know, in terms of actually using the blade, yeah, it's probably feels about the same, can do about the same stuff. About as well, no problems at all. But it's just when you start looking at the materials that you really start to see a fair variance. So I mean, this is like a thermoplastic sort of rubberized, you know, very, very strong material. And you know, laminated VG10, as I always say with fixed blades, VG10 is just fine because I don't particularly use them against abrasives that much. But however, when you do use them against abrasive, you must realize that this will hold its edge at least 3 times longer than VG10, and that's like a rough estimate. That's not assuming my tests are, you know, completely accurate, which I'm sure they're not. But M390 about 300 passes of the rope, VG10 like 70. So you know, you're looking at a real, you know, 70 to 80 kind of thing. You're looking at a real, depending on the brand, you're looking at a real difference in edge retention. Whereas there's not much of a toughness trade-off either, because I mean, laminated VG10 is tough, but then so is M390. So you're looking at a whole lot more edge retention for, and also stainlessness really, for about the same price for a knife that's about the same size. Both are made in like first world countries, so Italy and Japan. These are made in Japan for Fallkniven. These are made in Italy by Lionsteel. I mean, the handle materials, a lot of variants. The G10 one of this is, I think, the cheapest version, and that matches the Fallkniven's price with leather sheath entirely. This one's a little bit pricier, I think, with the wood, but you know. So yeah, what you've got basically is very similarly performing knives. This one has a few more options as well. You can get this in laminated COS, which has a green handle now, but the price is a whole lot more, and laminated COS isn't even as good a steel as M390. So Fallkniven sort of need to pull their fingers out. I mean, I sort of said when I got this Lionsteel, this full-size blade, that Fallkniven are in a bit of trouble, because Lionsteel seems to be going for the I'm just waiting for their A1 likeness knife to come out, and I dare say they might have the trifecta, because what you've got now is really F1 killer, S1 killer, and then who knows, the A1 killer could be just around the corner from Lionsteel. So bust out the A1 here. So all we're waiting for from Lionsteel is something about this size, another Moletta design, and you know what, if they put it in Nylox, or you know, something that's, you know, beating the laminated VG10 in terms of both cost and toughness and stainlessness and all that sort of thing, then yeah, Fallkniven, yeah, they're going to have to sort of, while these are still great user knives, of course, you know, the F1's one of my favourite blades. It's probably my most used knife out of all my knives. But I must say, if I didn't own either of these right now and I was looking, there'd just be no contest. You'd just go with the one that's got the better materials for the same price. It's kind of elementary, really. So yeah, unless you really have a hankering for a black-handled, which is part of the appeal for this Fallkniven F1, unless you really have a hankering for like a black-handled, sort of compact, rugged camp belt knife, survival knife, then this one's probably going to do the same work for you and just last a bit longer at it. I mean, the only things are it's going to be a bit trickier to sharpen. VG10 in here sharpens up really well. M390 requires, probably twice the amount of passes on your whetstone if you're using that sort of method. On my Tormek, I mean, very little extra worry or cost really. But yeah, in terms of just the basics, it's hard to sort of really say that. I can't really think of too many reasons you would choose the F1 over this now, unless you're just a real die-hard Fallkniven fan, or unless you really need a convex primary grind, which, yeah, its convex grind is good for like splitting your wood and stuff, but then these are quite small knives, and I don't know. I really don't know. I'm struggling to think. I love this knife, but I'm struggling to think of what I can tell you about it that puts it in favour over this one here. So actually, one thing I can bring up is that due to the crown spine on the Lionsteel, you can't strike a ferro rod with it. The flat spine of the Fallkniven can strike a ferro rod. So there you go. Maybe if you're thinking of absolute one-piece survival knife and you don't like bringing a ferro rod striker, then maybe the F1 is the better choice. Both weigh about the same. Yeah, as I said, really struggling to think of too many more benefits of this one over this one. So there we go. Thanks, guys.